I'm going to now talk about Buddhism, and a good place to start would be the Four Noble Truths. So, one thing to note, Buddhism rises out of Hinduism, so there is a lot of continuity between the two religions. But Buddhism, unlike Hinduism, does have a common creed. Buddhists accept these Four Noble Truths and become Buddhists through that acceptance and through the practices associated with Buddhism. But the first noble truth is that all life is suffering. And this sounds, of course, very dark and grim, but we need to make some sense of it. Buddhists tend to be determinists, meaning that they see a torrent of cause and effect, and whatever's happening right now is the result of a prior cause. So the world is constantly changing, and one thing is influencing another, and there's no stability to it. We can think about Heraclitus. The world is just continuous flux, much like fire. It's constantly changing. And if there is such a thing as a logos or stability underneath it, it is simply the laws of cause and effect, the laws that govern the constantly changing world. So the world is in constant flux. And characteristic of that cycle and that constant change is called samsara, which is also a term that comes into play in Hinduism. But it is the world as regularly experienced by the mind, and it's a world of constant ending and becoming. Okay, so it's a world of constant ending and becoming. And some characteristics of samsara. One is anicca, which is impermanence. Nothing lasts. Everything is in a state of change. Everything is fleeting. So that's an important hallmark of samsara, as is anatta, which is no self or not self. Okay. In terms of the ever-changing world, that includes yourself. That includes me. I am a constantly changing person. So the person that I woke up as this morning is fundamentally different than the person who went to sleep last night. And we fabricate in our minds this ego, this sense of self. But for the Buddhists, there is no self. That is a mental fabrication, an attempt to insert some stability into what is ultimately changing. And I'm a constant, I'm constantly, my emotions are changing, my dispositions, my moods, my knowledge, I forget things and I suddenly know less, and I learn things and I suddenly know more. And that's constantly changing. And there's really no stability besides sort of this constructed stability that remains permanent through it all. Rather, the Buddhist concept of mind and self is one that is constantly in flux, as well as is subject to samsara. Okay, so even myself is a constant ending and becoming. And you can think here about, say, a born-again religious person. There's a sense when someone becomes born again that the old self dies, the old self ends, and a new self rises up, and the self is radically changed. And the Buddhists see that as actually happening all the time with us. And the third hallmark of samsara is suffering. And this is where we get this idea that all life is suffering. All life as regularly experienced is in constant flux, and this causes us suffering. Okay, and why is that? Well, clearly it's because we desire something other than what is actual. So we desire stability when the world is not stable. And that seems pretty clearly true. When I am happy, I desire that state of happiness to be permanent. And so there's already a certain suffering, even in my happiness, because the state of happiness is by nature impermanent. So I'm desiring something that is impossible, and that becomes a source of suffering. And of course, when I'm suffering, most immediately, most directly, I'm desiring that, let's say I'm suffering with the flu, I'm desiring that I am in a healthy state, and I'm not. The all life is suffering. We can make sense of that when we think about samsara and the world as constantly changing and in flux. Okay. The second noble truth is the cause of suffering is ignorant craving. There's all sorts of translations of the noble truths, and often the second one is that the cause of suffering is desire, is clinging. The idea is that and here's my dog Sally, in case you wanted to see her. She likes to come and say hi. So she'll be joining us for this discussion on Buddhism. But for the second noble truth, Buddhism is essentially a philosophy of mind. It involves introspection and understanding the nature, makeup of the mind and mental states. This distinguishes it from Hinduism, which dabbles much more into metaphysics and what is the nature of reality. Buddhism is less concerned with whether God exists or not. Let's concern ourselves with the human condition. People find themselves in a state of suffering, and we want to pinpoint where the source of that suffering is, because we can't cure ourselves of it unless we understand where it comes from. So through Buddha's hold that the cause of all suffering, if you trace any feeling of suffering back to its fundamental primary cause, you will find there an ignorant craving. Okay, ignorant because we are ignorant of the ever-changing impermanence of the universe, and I mean we're ignorant of the not self that I was talking about before. As long as we cling to some kind of ego, Buddhists would say that we are ignorant of the truth that the self is constantly changing and being affected upon by causes that are outside of our control. And then a craving, so an ignorant craving, so a desire, a clinging. And again, I alluded to this when talking about the first noble truth, but so long as we desire that what is ultimately impermanent become permanent or achieve a status of permanence, we are craving, and we're craving something that is impossible. Okay. Now, the Buddhist ideal, is that you rid yourself of ignorant craving. You no longer desire. So you achieve a state of equanimity where there's no clinging to anything, and you accept the impermanence of your mind, of the world, and so on. And an interesting contradiction emerges in that one of the problems that Buddhists find themselves in when they start meditating and seeking this state of nirvana is that they end up clinging to or craving an end of suffering, craving nirvana. So I'm going to read here a quote from T.K. Seung, and I'll post this on Canvas so you can follow along. But the problem arises in the Buddhist ideal of being free from all desires and attaining nirvana. If you try to fulfill this ideal, you will find yourself still trapped in one desire, namely the desire to be rid of all desires and attain nirvana. Therefore, the Buddhists never try to achieve enlightenment by their will and self-imposed discipline. Instead, they patiently wait for the mysterious coming of enlightenment in the meditative state of total inaction. It can come upon them only by some mysterious power beyond their control and discipline. If they have any will, theirs is the will of a child. Okay, so when Buddhists, seek a state of non-suffering, they even have to let go of the desire for such a state. Okay, number 3 is that the suppression of suffering can be achieved. And that's where Buddhism suddenly becomes hopeful. The first 2 noble truths seem pretty dire, pretty grim. But number 3 gives us hope that we are not stuck necessarily in this state of suffering. And the Buddha, the original Buddha, Buddha just means an awakened one. So the original Buddha who founded the religion of Buddhism, had discovered that he could achieve a state of non-suffering, and he proposed a path that Buddhists could follow to achieve that state. Okay, so the 4th noble truth is that the way to do this is the Eightfold Path. And I'm going to, you can read about the Eightfold Path in our textbook. I'm also going to post information about it on Canvas. But it's not a step-by-step kind of thing. There are 8 folds on the path that all need to be simultaneously, followed. And some of it has to do with having the right intention, having the right motivation. Another has to do with having the correct wisdom, truly understanding the impermanent nature of mind and of world, and becoming wise in the understanding of the hallmarks of samsara that I talked about. And a third part of the Eightfold Path involves ethics, and specifically leading a virtuous life. As we saw with Aristotle, looking at virtue, virtue leads one to have happiness. And Buddhists would say the same thing. When you lead a virtuous life, which is a moderate, one of moderation, you end up having less regrets. You have, a good community around you. Your mind isn't struggling. You can stand behind what you've done, and you have self-control, because the development of virtue is essentially the development of a controlled self who's not carried away, easily by external or internal, mental forces.